I spent years waiting for this space to deliver on what I believed about it. And every time a moment came and went without changing anything for me, I had to ask myself what I was actually doing here. And honestly, I don't think I had a real answer, not one that actually held up. If you've been here from the beginning, you might remember I talked about leaving creative spaces behind to turn my focus toward finance and crypto. I touched on the frustration that came with that shift. But what I haven't really done is lay out the full arc of what that actually looked like for me. And a conversation that I had just this week forced me to actually look at that. Not just for you as a viewer, but because I wasn't sure I could actually answer it for myself. When I first came into this space, I was looking for something I could actually make sense of. And almost from day one, XRP was that for me. I could understand the use case with banks, infrastructure, a bridge for how money actually moves. It wasn't exciting in the way other things were, but it was something I could actually hold on to, at least intellectually, which is quite a bit. But along the way, I got pulled into other things, like meme coins with new projects, Telegram groups built around momentum, rating, pushing coins into action. I ran up a portfolio and I watched it fall. Sometimes because someone rug pulled, sometimes because I didn't pull my gains in time. And what I started to notice was that it required a version of me I didn't want to keep being. The long nights, the paranoia about who to trust, figuring out how to navigate spaces that weren't necessarily built for me. And that's what it took to be included in those spaces. The chasing, the noise, the way it changed how I think and actually how I acted. And after a while, I could feel it. My nervous system just couldn't keep running that cycle. So I came back to what I could actually understand. And I started trying to really dissect what I was actually looking at, the rhythm of it, the patterns that it created, what certain markers actually meant versus what I was told that they meant, what I was really rallying behind. And to be honest, it's not as exciting, but the shift offered me something more grounding: patience, clarity, the ability to regulate and actually see instead of just feel. But I never stopped believing something real was happening. Even after looking for faster ways to make returns, that original belief didn't leave. It just changed shape. It became less like hope and more like something I couldn't ignore. Watching the pieces seem to align in front of my face, not around any one project or any one date, but around the world genuinely seeming to move toward this technology. Open source, decentralized, something that was never properly introduced to most people, and yet is quietly becoming part of the architecture of how things work. And if this is true, I thought, why not walk through the door and actually try and understand it? That brought me to a conversation that I had this week. Someone asked me what success would look like for this channel. And my first instinct was, I think, the usual things: the market doing well, people following me, being right about something and having that mean something even more. But those are all things outside of my control. When she pushed me on what success would look like based on what I could actually influence, I struggled. The closest thing I could land on was possibly embodying what I'm learning and sharing. But even that felt incomplete because I'm still not entirely sure what that looks like on the other side. I feel like I'm sitting outside the technology right now. I can see it, I can speak to it, I can even help people understand it. But I'm not sure how to put it into use in my own life beyond this. For a while, I thought I wanted to be a bridge of some sorts for a world that's transitioning, that most people are too busy to notice. But that doesn't pay any bills. And a modern day financial Mother Teresa isn't what I need on my tombstone. And then she asked something that stopped me completely. If you want to give people hope, how would you know if you did? And I didn't have an answer. And I've been sitting with that ever since the question was asked. Because what I'm actually trying to offer isn't hope in the way the space usually sells it. It's more of an understanding, something that was never properly introduced, something most people either dismiss or get swept up in entirely without actually knowing what it is. I'm not here to predict outcomes. I'm trying to understand what is actually happening while it's happening. And I think that's worth something. Not as a promise, not even as a date on a calendar, but as a way of moving through something that is genuinely shifting the world as I see it, and doing so with my eyes wide open. But I also know that only seeing what confirms what I already believe is quite dangerous. So I want to hear from you, not in a way to hand the wheel over, but because a real conversation is more useful to me than to live inside of an echo chamber that I created. So I have a few questions. Take them seriously if you'd like. 1, how would you know if content in this space was actually useful for you? Not just interesting, actually useful. 2, what was a moment where something in the market played out exactly as you expected, but it didn't move your portfolio? And what did that moment change for you? 3, what are you actually looking for right now? Not in the market, but in how you understand it. And let me add one more, because I actually think this is probably the most honest question I could ask. What would make you trust a voice in this space? Not follow, not like, but trust. And over the next month or so, I will come back to these type of questions, not because I'm looking for direction from you, but because understanding what you're experiencing in this space makes this work better. I do this content non-edited, straightforward. The intention is for it to be me sitting in my living room talking to you, simply, without jargon, without technical hype. So if you heard my dog in the background, that's what was happening. But the questions were serious, and I would love your response. My name is James Harris. This is Layer 1. Thank you for joining me for another episode. And until the next one, I'll see you later. Have a good weekend.